All right, welcome back. So next we're taking a look at a brand new component we haven't seen yet called the input group. So if you go to the docs, you go to components, and then scroll down, right below forms is input group. And I'm including this in this section because it goes along with forms. Often you use these inside of a form. So what they are is a way of adding text or buttons or other information to the left, the right side of an input. As you can see here we have this little @ symbol in front of a username. This is a group of inputs. Here we have the ending of an email in an input. We can do it to a text area. We're not going to go over every single piece because there's a lot of them here. You could do a checkbox. I'm not really sure. I guess, when would you do this? Maybe if you're building like a to-do list app or something? I don't know. I'm sure there's some use case. You could do multiple inputs as well. You can do multiple input group text pieces, although I would probably just do this as one. You can do buttons. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. And you can also do it on different inputs as well. But I'm not going to make you, watch me do it for every single one. At this point, you hopefully should be comfortable enough with looking at the docs and extrapolating from what I show you. But I'm going to show you the basics. So what you do, if we want to recreate this first one, is we have our basic input, which we just give class of form control. But we wrap everything inside of a div with the class of input group. They're giving it a margin bottom just to space it out. We don't have to have that. Then there's a class called input group prepend, and that will put something at the beginning of the input. And then there's also input group append to put it at the end. So you specify that, and then you add a span or some sort of text, and you do input group text as a class. So let's take a look. I have another blank file, and instead of doing an @ sign, let's do a $sign or something. So I'm going to start I'm just going to do a form just to be nice. We don't have to do that, but just to be more conventional. Then I'm going to do my input group, which if we resize this, take a look at. So input group on a div, hit tab. And then inside of here, I'll start by adding my input. We'll do type equals text, class equals form control. And let's give it a placeholder of, let's say, I don't know, price, enter a price. And I'm going to open this with live server. Okay, just because I like this, I'm going to do a little header at the top that just says input groups. All right, so enter a price. Over here, I want a $sign. So this is where we add a second div with input group prepend. So dot input group dash prepend. And then inside of that, we're going to put our span, and I'm going to give it just simple $sign. And then we give it the class of input group text, just like that. And if we take a look, there we go. We have our input group with the $sign. And we can do the exact same thing on the other side if I duplicate this. But instead of doing prepend, we do append, and then also we put the input first. Oh, that's so annoying. And save. And now we have the $sign at the end. You can see why they were doing that margin bottom on these input groups, just to make them a little easier. So MB3, there we go. You do not have to do that though. It just adds some space. So let's, instead of a $sign, let's do something like @gmail.com. And let's make this an email input. Enter your email. I don't know why you would assume someone has Gmail, but here's an example. So you can totally do this with an input group. You can also do one at the beginning and end. We just do input prepend, and then the input, and then input group append afterwards. As far as sizing, we can do the same thing. What's nice is that you only have to specify input group large or input group small, and it applies to everything inside. So you don't have to also do form control small or large. So let's do another one of these. Let's take this. Let's do the prepend and duplicate it. And we'll do input group large. And now we have a larger one. And I'm running out of ideas. Let's do the @ sign this time. Enter a username. and make this type equals text. There we go. So now we have a large one, and we can also do a small one. You can do checkboxes. So you always follow the same pattern where you have input group, prepend, or append inside of the input group. And then inside of the prepend or append, you have input group text. And then inside of that, you put whatever you want to go inside. Now here's an example using multiple inputs or input groups. You just do an input group prepend if you want them at the beginning. And then you just do input group text and then another input group text, and it separates them out. Personally, I'm not crazy about that look, but it works. Now, something slightly more interesting, you can do it with a button. So it's the same thing, input group div, input group prepend, and inside, we don't even have to say input group text. You just put the button. So let's try that out. Let's do a form or an input. So we'll do input group with margin bottom 3 just to keep everything the same. And then let's do like a search form. So we'll have an input, text type equals text, form control, and let's just say search right here. And then at the end, we'll do append, and we're going to put a button in here instead of a span. So button.btn, let's do btn success. And then let's just say go. There we go. So we have this little search now. And it's a button at the end, and change the color, blah, blah, blah. It's just a regular button, but it fits right there, nice and neat. And if you wanted it at the beginning, then you would just do prepend instead of append and put the input afterwards. So that's the basics of input groups. One last thing that I do want to show has to do with icons. So if you're familiar with Font Awesome or other icon libraries, skip this. I'm not showing any new Bootstrap specific stuff, but I'm just going to show you what we can do. So Font Awesome is a library. It used to be entirely free. Now they have a free version and more premium icons. And we're just going to work with the free one. And we can use them. I like to use them on input groups often to specify, email and password. It's just a nice little touch. So we can include it very easily. They have a free CDN. You can specify if you wanted the pro link, you have to sign in and all of that. But we're just using the free one. So copy that. And then we'll go over to somewhere over here, paste that in. I'll add a comment that just says Font Awesome and save. Now what we have is the ability to include icons. And these icons, if you go to the icons page, we need to filter by free. These are all the icons we can use. So if we search for something like password, we can use a key. So let's say we want to use the key. You click on it, and you can see here, this is what we need. Icon, or I, and then class FAS, FA-key. So that's just the specifics of Font Awesome. So if I shrink this down, and I come over here, and I do another input group. So let's do input group. And then inside of here, we'll do input group prepend. And then inside of that, we can do our icon and give it Font Awesome FA key. And then we can do input group text. And then we need to do our text input, which I'll just copy right here with form control. And then let's just say, this is supposed to be for a password actually. So I'm going to make a password input. Save, and there we go. And actually looking at this, it's not centered perfectly. What we need to do is do a span or a div and give it the class. It's the same that we've been doing, input group text. And we can remove it from the icon and then just put the icon inside. Just like this, and save. And now we get this nice little password input. And let's say we want to do the same thing, but for username, which I guess, okay, I just duplicated it. I'm going to leave this one as password. The top one, we'll do username. That usually comes first. And instead of a key, I think there's an icon just called user. Yeah. And then we can change this to be text and change this to be username. And I'll add margin bottom 3 just to make it look a little bit nicer. And there we go. I like how these input groups look. They're nice. They're simple. Often I like to use them just for this, just to give a little icon. There's no functionality there, nothing extremely useful. It just looks nice in my opinion. And I'm also a fan of using buttons, especially on the right side. I haven't really used them on the left side. I usually do some sort of search or go or something like that. And as far as the icons, this isn't a complete tutorial, but pretty much all of them, it's FAS space and then FA dash some name of the icon. And as we saw, there are lots of them that you can use. Even on the free version, there's still 1,300 free ones. Anyway, that's it for input groups.